So it's not to create this idea that, Africa is the West, and Africa can build and you can create an Auburn Avenue like we have here, because it doesn't speak to the tone or to the community and to the needs of the areas in which you're serving. Although a number of African states are potentially rich, others occupy such a marginal natural environment that existence as a nation will always involve struggle. Majority of all people, including South Africa, where I was born, are poor at present. This does not mean just the financial poverty experienced by institutions, which limits the number and scope of information in library projects, but also the poverty as the main fact in the lives of the great majority of potential and actual beneficiaries of services. It may also mean poverty in the information skills that have to be assumed to exist before it is realistic to pursue the practice of traditional librarianship. Information service needs to be designed to help alleviate poverty while functioning within the financial constraints that are consequences of that poverty. Services should reflect the circumstances of the people and of the national budget. Self-reliance suggests that if service is completely appropriate to Africa's needs, and they ultimately must emerge from Africa's own intellectual and physical resources. Self-reliance in information is all of a piece with economics, cultural and political self-reliance. A nation which does not achieve it can expect to be victim of other more powerful nations in one way or another. It may be good for donors to pay, as to say that they're giving on behalf of disenfranchising and on behalf of exploitation, but the African at that point is the one who suffers, because now they're indebted once again, and so now they're back. It's as if you free yourself from colonial rule, but then you still have to answer to France anytime you make a decision. The importance of the sustainability principle follows suit in that it presumes a reasonable guarantee that some source of funds will continue to be available at adequate levels for the foreseeable future. And that true sensibility means creating something that emerges from the needs, opinions, and actions of a community of users themselves. This ultimately ensures that the community will safeguard it in their own interest, because it is theirs, it is their own. And so at the end of the day, when you talk about poverty and the discussion earlier regarding conditions that make people go out and steal and take and things of that nature, when one has an interest in the thing or in whatever we're talking about surviving and being, then the care of it is different, then the approach to it is different. And so you have to create opportunities to include the community in which the library serves at every junction, which means there has to be dialogue, there has to be communication, which is also here. Democracy demands that citizens should have information that will enable them to accept the full responsibility of political participation. This principle creates a far-reaching requirement for service to the whole of the people, rather than just minorities who might be literate, articulate, influential, geographically accessible, or even able to pay. The assumption to make Africa part of this paperless society seems to me that it will leave majority behind and entrench the privilege of minorities in relation to the future, and also in relation to contemporary print technology. Because even going paperless means there's an assumption that the whole or the least of those will be able to have the technology to access the information, right? So even going paperless means that there's the assumption that internet is available in huts, And there's an assumption that there's an availability to access this information, and quite frankly, the government shutdown put a lot of things in perspective for me, because you didn't have access to government resources. Once they shut down, they were shut down. And then, you know, even beyond that is who owns the information. So responsiveness means providing the information that the people want, when and where they want it. Surveys of users and the development of community profiles are useful they're useful in ensuring this, but careful listening to what people say about their needs and the services they obtain is vital. In this way, a service can be provided with which is rooted in clear ideas about users and potential users of information. A true response to the total of information needs involves taking service, out to the public where they are, and positively offering a full range of opportunities that can conveniently be taken up by those who may experience some specific need. Communication is an emphasis which shifts the balance of service away from providing a response, but not fully accepting the obligation to ensure that it is delivered in a way that recipients can interpret and understand. A service could be democratic and responsive, but still be failing its users if there were not the opportunity for a dialogue which would ensure that understanding and acceptance of information takes place. Information workers can use their knowledge of the users to anticipate what will communicate effectively, so as to repackage information from difficult or inaccessible forms into more acceptable forms. What is crucial is that there should be dialogue, or the opportunity for a dialogue, either to deliver the whole response in an oral environment, or to present, contextualize, interpret, and if necessary, modify or substitute some form of the information package in a print or computer environment. But necessarily having the opportunity to meet each user from their perspective and from where they're able to understand information. So for future service considerations, and we've considered this at Auburn, but in the context of Africa, you know, the consideration is you know, for services for whom should it be provided, and you know, what should it deliver, those types of things. On the horizon, the ARL has received $25 million to renovate the existing space. So we're not adding square footage, so to speak, is to tearing down sheetrock and creating a new environment within the space that we already have. Within this public referendum passed and monies collected, the library is preparing for a transformation. What the public might see in this transformation is libraries as cultural heritage centers. So right now we're thinking libraries, and the focal point of the library is the collection. In the future, you might consider Auburn to be a library, but it is a library as a cultural heritage center, okay? Where those services that the public has grown accustomed to, and which allows us to maintain our integrity as well. However, as the change in the needs of the community, because our community has changed, so no longer, you mean they close down all of the projects, so we don't have a neighborhood per se. And so the community, as it's changed, and Georgia State is buying up everything around it, then we have to now consider what is our place in this future of Auburn Avenue, for example, which once was the corridor for African American business and intellect and the whole nine. So the library now stands as a beacon of hope. It stands as what was spoken about yesterday about the Sankofa. About a bird that flies in one direction and looks back in another direction with something in its mouth. Right. So now it becomes even more important, in my opinion, that Auburn Avenue maintains, because I know Georgia State wants it, but but that it maintains its position and continues to do what it's always done. So the proposed changes embrace the idea that utilizes space for particular usage. For example, the pendulum shift seems to go from the collection taking center stage towards programming and event space being at the core of institutional activities and services. The first point of contact becomes programming spaces. In an era where numbers tell the whole story, it is clear that more people visit the institution on basis of programs. However, priority should remain on the research focus of the institution. And new leadership should find the balance that will keep the integrity of the institution secure. My view of the institution is libraries, again, as cultural heritage centers. This institution collects, preserves, interprets, makes accessible, and tells the stories that make the Africana diaspora as it relates to Africans in the southern United States and the rest of the world. It makes, I think part of like the question I keep in my mind playing over and over is, I wasn't here this morning, but the youth don't see the relevancy because they don't know any better. They're not taught, it's not included in their education, and they're only going to do whatever it takes for them to get by. There's no emphasis on being extraordinary. There's no emphasis on doing something greater than and not being average. Everybody wants to just kind of just stay in their corner, I guess, if you will, and just stay in their lane, which is, I believe what the white teacher was trying to do to me. She didn't want me to step out, and follow my heart and my passions. And so that creates, what we have. That creates what we have. And we have to take a hard look at that. Technology, and these are future space considerations. So technology has created almost limitless opportunity to position the institution globally. Access points to some of the ARL's, Auburn Avenue Research Library's archives collections have already begun to become available online through the Digital Library of Georgia. Through an online search of ARL's, which is Auburn Avenue Research Library's catalog, you'll discover the finding aids along with links to the digital images of the materials from anywhere in the world. So these are materials within our archives that have been either donated or purchased. They've now been digitized and placed online so that anyone in any corner of the world can access the collection. And so I think in the future, as we move forward, we'll start creating this opportunity. And I guess when I think about spaces, I think of the physical space of Auburn Avenue Research Library, and then I think of the online environment, the virtual space of the Auburn Avenue Research Library, and how those two spaces where you can walk in physically and touch the material, or if you're unable to walk in, you still have access to the information you may seek that we might only have and nobody else has. And so it connects the world, it makes it a smaller world, and it allows more people to visit the library, not just for programs and not just for events, but actually to use the collection. Because I think that's part of our commissioners and people who make choices about where money goes. They want to know the numbers. How many people are coming in, use the collection, and if they're not coming in at a high number, then what's the value of having it? What's the value of preserving it? But the value has to be, we have to think beyond, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we have to think beyond the numbers game, the money game, because it's so much more than that. So the Reference and Research Division currently allows electronic access to periodicals through JSTOR, African American newspapers through ProQuest, and other electronic databases like Galileo. People who can't make it to Auburn Avenue for a program, currently they have the opportunity to engage remotely. So a lot of our programs we're using Ustream now to stream them live. So if you're unable to come into the library and we're having a program, you can click on the Ustream and you can participate whether or not you want to ask a question or have a comment. You will use the instant message feature. And okay, and so people who, Auburn Avenue Research Library is a testimony of a people who were not allowed the opportunity for an education yet found a way. It is the stories of a race who had been doomed by fate to be damned, but have made a way anyhow. It is the personification of the African griot. Through its offerings, it tells and retells the stories of the diaspora. And this was a conference that I had to put this on here. I went to IFLA, International Federation of Library Associations, and they had a conference in South Africa. This is the coast of Durban, and just was taking photographs as I do when I go, and I just thought that this was such a beautiful image. And I show this to youth because many a times, you hear stories about, pirates, going out and capturing ships in an ocean. And when you look at the pirates, they have this almost like a lake boat with one motor, and they're riding and they're, hitting waves, and they have this, rocket launchers and AK-47s. And for children, for me, it wasn't in perspective to how close the highway for ships are to the coast of Africa as they're traveling north towards Egypt, right? So it's that close to where they can easily get there and get back. So anyway, that's why I had that. But that's my presentation. Oh, I do have. I did want to show you all one thing. Yeah, I wanted to. Will this thing allow me to? Okay. I wanted to, because I talked to you about.
Oh, take them down a little.
Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. Because I talked to you and. Just want to bring up Internet Explorer somehow. Because I wanted to. Good. Is it? Yeah, just explore it. Do it. Well, I want to show you all, how to access our collection. I also wanted to demonstrate to you some of the collections that are digitized in which you have access to online. And I also wanted to show you the Ustream page and some of the programming that has taken place at Auburn that you can today go and look at the archives of if you hadn't had the opportunity to be present or to see. And so, as we're discussing the future, in my opinion, I see, Africa, and we talked about corruption, and we talked about a lot of things that are stalling the progress in Africa as a whole. There has to be some, I know UNESCO tried to do something years back, and it failed. I think it was a national information system, and I think it was 1970s, 80s, around there, where they tried to implement a plan to seemingly, not necessarily consolidate the library services of Africa, but to have a plan that would be in place for each country that they can adapt or adopt and then apply. And I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 2 months after that meeting, Idi Amin took over. And then because it happened in Uganda. And so it created a whole nother